Okay, thank you very much. So let me just do a couple of introductions. So right now, I just wanted to let you know that as far as who's on the call from the county, I'll introduce Eric Peterson. You all know, I'm sure know him, but he's the director of our airports. I'm the director of a county department called Roads and Airports. So it's basically our public works department, if you will. Um, and we do construction and maintenance as well as operate the airports. I'm also introduced Yarden Elonen. I can't have trouble with her last name. She's with our team and she's helped put together this report. And Yarden, thank you for waving. Is there anybody else from your side that's on the call that I should introduce?
No, unfortunately, half our team today had a conflicting meeting for
No worries. Thank you for attending. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll go directly into this screen share and get this presentation going. What this presentation is a series of slides to describe the Reidhillview Vision Plan community outreach that we well, I just saw somebody right on my screen. That's a new one for me. Reidhillview Vision Plan that we prepared, and this is the community outreach piece of it. So the reason for this meeting, as I talked about earlier, is to present the overview of the Reidhillview Vision Plan. To give you some background, the board has taken actions to study and prepare for possible closure of Reidhillview Airport. They certainly have not voted to close Reidhillview Airport, but they've done a number of things to allow closure and to get a better handle on the issues around closure. So it's definitely on the table. As you all know, Reidhillview is obligated to stay open until 2031 based on the last federal grant that the county took at Reidhillview in 2011. The vision plan is now a draft. I know that you have copies of it and it's ready for presentation to the board. I will say that we are currently scheduled to present this plan to the Board of Supervisors on November 17th. So next month, about a month and a week. So it's helpful to remind everybody, because it was almost 2 years ago, what the Board of Supervisors actions on December 4th, 2018 were. If you recall, the administration presented a new business plan for the county airports designed to kind of clear up the issue with not taking federal grants that has lingered since the dispute about skydiving and the dispute that the county was in with the FAA. And so that not taking grants was originally an FAA punitive measure. Then the county didn't take any grants. And we decided that the county wasn't going to take grants until such time as a new business plan was written. So we presented that business plan to the board, and I hope you all have copies of it, because it's a comprehensive way of increasing revenue to the airports. It also recommended taking federal grants, and it recommended a number of things to improve the financial health of the airports, and that was staff's recommendation. But essentially, the Board of Supervisors did not adopt the business plan. And instead, they directed us to do 11 individual things. And I'm going to run through them because it's important that we all start from the same thing, from the same location. The Board of Supervisors adopted a policy that the county would not apply for AIP grants at Reidhillview Airport, and that they would spend general fund money necessary to safely operate Reidhillview. Number two, they directed the administration to accept really the entitlement money down at San Martin, which we're in the process of getting that money to pay back at least the paving that we have so far. So they really directed us to go forward and accept money at San Martin. We haven't accepted grants at San Martin since 2011 either. They directed the county executive to apply to the FAA for property releases on the Reidhillview corner site that's at the corner of Capitol and Tully that we currently use for Christmas trees and pumpkin patches and contractor laydown. So that was a piece of the business plan recommendation, but while they didn't adopt the business plan recommendations, the Board of Supervisors directed us to do kind of like almost like line items. So this was like one of the things in the business plan to increase revenue at the airport would to get a property release. They also asked us to work on with the city of San Jose on a planning exercise for the Reidhillview Eastridge area, including the possibility of alternative uses at Reidhillview after 2031. That's what we're talking about today. Excuse me. 5 is really about what would need to happen at San Martin. And it's not really too timely to do that now, to spend money on this. So we haven't really started work on this yet, but this would be to figure out what the community impact would be to improve the airfield at San Martin, including a tower and the nav systems necessary to, if there was an increase in traffic at San Martin. This was number 6 was to develop the transportation improvements for 101 and San Martin Avenue if there was an increase in traffic as a result of the increase in air traffic at San Martin. Number 7 was the capital plan to pay for these improvements. And number 8 was to analyze the airborne lead the health concerns associated with airborne lead. And that study is actually underway. It's being done with the county health department, and it's being managed through the county executive's office. So I'm not working on that project. Number 9 was to work with San Jose State University to see if they would essentially move their operation to San Martin. Number 10 was to discuss what the impact if would be on emergency and disaster response if there was a change of use at Reidhillview. In other words, if the airport closed. And number 11 was working with the community, the aviation community, but working with the pilots to determine if we could use non-leaded aviation fuel at Reidhillview and San Martin. So right now what we're working on is the vision plan, which we're talking about today. We have the grant application submitted at San Martin. The property release has been submitted for the corner parcel to the FAA. The lead study is underway and the emergency and disaster response analysis is underway. We've been working on that. And certainly we're aware of all of the use of the airports for the recent fires. We're acutely aware of that. So the rest of the presentation after that introduction was to really help people with this document. It's an 82-page document, and really what I do and what I'm going to do is just walk you through how the document is structured and explain what it is and what it isn't. So I can do that a lot faster than I did the other part. So it's the document, which is called the Reidhillview Vision Plan, is broken into 5 parts. We're in the introduction right now. It describes what the purpose of the project is, and then the analysis section includes the existing situation, including demographic analysis and land use studies, and also the attributes of the actual site, and talks about what programs of different levels of development could occur. Excuse me, not levels, but types of development that could occur. Then we move into a description of the community outreach process, and really not just the process, but what we learned from the community outreach, because we used the community outreach to help build the vision for the community and what concrete steps they could take to implement the vision that the community has for the site. And then number 5 is really what would have to happen after we complete this report, and how this document could be used potentially for the next 10 years. It should the Board of Supervisors continue with their direction to look at alternate uses. So I just say, hey, it's about ideas, brainstorming, and talking about the long-term process. It's not really about whether to close the airport, what we should put on the site, or what improvements need to be made. So it really doesn't recommend any land use for the site. So under the analysis, one of the things that's really acutely clear on this map is that Reidhillview sits in a single-family residential area. So the yellow on this map represents single-family residential. This is a general plan map for the city of San Jose. It's a zoning or a general plan map. The darker brown is high-density residential, and then the reds and oranges represent commercial, generally community serving commercial, although Eastridge Center is regional commercial. So the reds, the pinks, and the oranges represent commercial. The green is basically open space and parks, and the blues represent either publicly owned lands or schools, because schools are publicly owned. What you do see in this map is an overabundance of yellows and browns, with probably the necessary retail and services necessary to support the surrounding land use. But what's missing from this map, and it's a very big missing piece, is jobs. There's no real industrial office parks, even medical offices. There's no jobs really in this. The only jobs in this diagram are service jobs. So then also within this analysis section, this is a typical drawing that is used for long-range planning. It kind of gives some of the site constraints, what would be necessary for our transportation system, including an internal road network, what the surrounding road capacities and sizes are, what the recreational amenities are around it, and what and even things like, in this case, there's a flood zone running through here. This blue is a flood zone. And then the proposed new light rail that's going to be built on Capitol Expressway is shown here. It's called Opportunities and Constraints. We kind of give the community and everybody an example of the type of uses that could be out here. There has been, discussion of technology training and maker spaces, and even training that gets into some of the more modern aviation uses, including drone technology, battery technology, self-driving cars, or automotive technology. But generally, this is just a diagram picture of all the various types of land uses that are available in any type of urban setting. And this site is 180 acres of flat land. So it can really accommodate any of these things or all of these things. It's a very large site. So then the community outreach, we held a workshop. Well, we did pre-meetings with the community, including including you all in one form or another, to get an idea of how to structure how we were going to go about doing the outreach. And then we did a pretty big workshop that a lot of you attended. And then we followed that up. Unfortunately, then the workshop was in February. We followed that up with really virtual type communication with the community. And we're finishing with this virtual type communication, which is this meeting. What we heard from the community around the airport was they were interested in their family connections. There's multiple generations of grandchildren, parents and grandparents that have lived in the neighborhood, and they want to make sure that the neighborhood is welcoming to their families. They're interested in economic opportunities, and those economic opportunities can run through educational opportunities. They are interested in community resources. They mentioned jobs and access to improved healthcare programs. They mentioned the diversity and the diverse cultures that are surrounding the airport, and the historic nature of East San Jose and what has happened there historically. They have a lot of cultural and community pride, improved quality of life around the airport, and housing stability. When we started this community outreach, the Google project was a really big topic of conversation in San Jose, and there's a lot of fear in the community about displacement as those jobs are created in San Jose. The pressures on the housing stock that's available, driving those costs up, and then driving renters out of their communities. So with that, we built this draft vision statement, and this is in the video that you had sent me, Walt, from Scott Rolfing, so I know you've seen this. So as with most vision statements, it's not perfect, and there's always lots of comments about it. So we thought it would be a good idea to present the vision statement with some of the comments that we have, what people liked and what people didn't like about the vision statement. But it's right here, and it has some qualifiers around it. So then the vision itself, we took the community aspirations that we heard in the vision statement that we wrote, and we grouped them into themes. And then we took those themes and we developed strategies and tactics that can be used for the next 10 years if the planning continues for closing the airport. The themes are these three themes: neighborhood and infrastructure, and you see the strategies roll down below that about public space, community centers, safety, homelessness. Culture and diversity was a theme, and you see those pieces underneath that. And success and well-being is a theme. Now, as you can see, I'm already on page 59 of the report. So there's subsequent pages in here that describe those, how those strategies, those themes could be recognized through the strategies and the tactics. And then in looking to the future, we wanted to give a roadmap for if the Board of Supervisors, continues on this path, what would it look like? And so it's really three phases. So phase one is something we're in the middle of right now. We've already done a lot of this work in phase one. Phase two is really if we're going to go forward with decision to replace the airport with close the airport. There would need to be a collaborative master planning process with the community, and it would need to be set up in a formal way. This wouldn't be just community meetings. It would need structure for such a large piece of land, and it would need a lot of support. And then after you can really get into a actual planning process, then that process would take place. And that's things like hiring architects, getting developers involved, zoning changes, general plan changes, and infrastructure investments. So that completes it. That is the complete presentation. So I will turn it back over to you now, Walt. Hello?
Walt, you're muted.
Oh, did I tell you I'm learning this now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Harry, for taking the time to present the findings of the vision plan team, which was obviously pretty expensive and extensive. Anyway.
Didn't come out of the AEF, Walt.
A frighteous slip here. Anyway, so you partially answered the question that I had before we jump into the chat room. So going forward, how is that information going to be used? And you mentioned it's going to be a master plan process and so forth. Do you have any idea in terms of timing on how these phase two and phase three things are going to be addressed?
I really don't. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and there's a lot of concern in the community about that exact thing. This project, no decision has been made. And, it really depends on the Board of Supervisors. I can tell you that we're going to bring this forward on November 17th. And I think that will be the first time that the Board of Supervisors had a substantial item about the airport. I mean, we had some things at Hewlett regarding the lighting at Reidhillview. We did have an issue brought forth by the FAA that I discussed at a committee of the supervisors. And then we received $1 million of general fund money. So we're going to do a signage project this year. But in the past 2 years, the Board of Supervisors has not heard a substantive airport item. That $1 million for the lighting was in a budget document. So is when they were considering, $300 million budget cuts, and it wasn't even discussed. So November 17th could be an important day. It could be, I don't know, but that'll be their first opportunity to kind of have an airport discussion. And I think it'll be interesting.
Also, our understanding is, nothing is going to happen in the next 10 years for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good understanding. You mean when you say nothing happened, you mean the airport won't close? Yeah, I
True.
think that's very true. I don't see anything. Yeah, but I think the Board of Supervisors can continue to move this process forward or stop this process. I really don't know. So, and I'm not in any kind of betting or guessing type position. But I will say, since December, the board hasn't had a substantive discussion about the airports, and this will be their first opportunity to do that. I will also say that lead study is getting close to completion. And so you combine the lead study with the land use study, and then you start to develop some momentum. But I'm not close to that lead study. They've been working on it for a while, and then on that date, we're also going to bring forward the FBO item for South County, but I don't think that'll be on the consent calendar.
All right. Well, there's a lot going on that day.
So that's an important date.
Sounds like it. So do we have any questions from the chat room?
I have a question.
Who's that, please?
It's Lori Mann.
Go ahead.
You were breaking up a little bit during the discussion. I apologize, but I think I heard you say that the Board of Supervisors had advised you to take FAA money for San Martin, but that hadn't been done. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, we haven't received the money yet, but we have prepared a grant application, and the FAA has told us that they were going to fund our grant at San Martin. That's just for our entitlement money. After we complete, and I know this isn't about San Martin, but after we complete the steps with the FBO to change the FBO around and get the revenue up down there through the acquisition of the hangars, I expect us to do a taxiway project down there to extend the taxiway in front of the FBO, and also some additional paving. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that these general aviation facilities, and I've certainly spent a little time looking at them now. They all seem to be challenged, except the few that are in extremely affluent communities or have targeted type of, when I say affluent in terms of the users of the airport. And this airport has a program has struggled financially for a fair amount of time, and I think that the airport was certainly not, the airport suffers a little bit from the, not being, I'd say, very high on the list of county services. And the staff, I think that everything has to flow from the finances of the AEF. A lot of folks have suggestions about how the airport should be, but the only means that I see of achieving any of that is to start to develop revenue streams and using those revenue streams to capitalize future development plans. And that's my experience with building airports is, you don't generally build airports before the traffic is there. Most airports that I've been to, the expansions come after the airports become overcrowded. And the plan that we put forward in late 2018 was a revenue plan designed to get the airports on better financial footing. And I think that that plan, it would, if it would have been adopted, would have been a piece of the puzzle, a foundational piece of the puzzle that you're talking about. But that was not picked by the Board of Supervisors.
And why not? Was it not attractive enough, or?
I mean, I sat in the room and went through the whole thing with them. 3 of them said, don't take grants and start to study closure options.
Yeah, but that means in their mind it's going to be closed. I mean, there's not. I don't consider this a serious effort to look at the development opportunities for an asset like an airport that you cannot duplicate anymore anywhere. I mean, it's once it's gone, it's gone. We all know that.
I think that the report, we are land use professionals. A lot of us are professional, either engineers or architects or planners. And we recognize that attempting to go through a land use plan 10 years in advance of anything happening without even a decision for something happening being approved would have been futile and frustrating for all involved, because it would have led to arguments about, how many units at what density and how many acres of park. And that would be a futile argument today because it wouldn't even matter. So why put yourself through that? We thought that the best solution was to develop a community vision and a roadmap for the community to continue to work on this. And that was our decision. Based on what we think was the best professional advice that the staff came up with. And that's why we wrote it that way. And we have seen a lot of plans as well.
Thank you, Harry. So let's move on to the chat room. John?
One of the questions that's come up in the chat is that when a report like this gets presented to the Board of Supervisors, generally there is a staff recommendation to go with that. Are you able to share what the staff recommendation is or what action you'd like the board to take? Or are you just telling them to read it and enjoy it?
Yeah, I specifically am, right now, the way the report is written is for the Board of Supervisors to accept the report. There's no recommendation to do anything besides that.
And accept means just put it in the file and
Well, usually it's a type of approval that they approve of the work that we did. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, John, anything else?
Yeah, hold on a second. So Kenny B had a question. Can you unmute Kenny, Walt?
He can unmute himself, actually.
Will you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I have a few comments about the vision plan. Some of them are my own. Some of them I got from some other people that aren't as connected to this, but they had opinions. So anyway, first off is there's lines in the vision plan for community outreach. There's no mention of vacant space to be used in Eastridge. I think most people are aware that Eastridge is going to be closing a lot, especially now. By 2031, Sears will definitely be long gone. So you got plenty of space there to open up whatever it is the county does with community outreach. The vacant space on White Road, the golf course, that's almost never mentioned. I believe last I checked, that was zoned for residential, and some of it is actually, I believe, already been carved out. I think its current use, it's being used to feed cattle. Or they're just being sent there to clean it up because it's a fire hazard. But that's about the only goal of that course anyway. So that's never mentioned in this, and I don't know why. A couple other things is when you present this, Mr. Freitas, I think there's some issues, like one, which was just now, was I think it was on page 16 when you look at the map where it has everything in zoning. You mentioned, well, there's no jobs here. There's just service industry jobs, like working at Starbucks or Safeway or something. Well, you're really, I don't know if it's by accident or not. I hope it's by accident that you're missing out on all of the jobs at Reidhillview, which are not service industry jobs, and they do pay more than minimum wage. So I think that's something you should be more cognizant of next time you happen to present this.
Can you explain why that's the case?
I'm sure he will. I'm sure it was just a mistake, an honest mistake. We all make those, I'm sure. I believe. Anyway,
Right,
those are
can
my
you
questions and
give
comments.
Mr. Fridas a chance to respond to your questions? Harry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I can speak to Eastridge. I mean, you know, the parcels outside of the airport are within the city of San Jose's jurisdiction for land use. The Eastridge Mall actually is heavily constrained by its proximity to the airport, both from a land use standpoint and from a height standpoint. So, you know, we tried not to get into the city of San Jose's business on Eastridge, but if the airport closes, Eastridge would definitely be, could be a housing site. I know that gets to your other point about falling rents. This isn't supposed to be, all reports are dated from the day that they're written. And I've never written a report and presented it to the public that somebody told me that my report was too old, whether it was 10 years old or a month old, it was always too old. So the golf course itself is actually heavily constrained by City of San Jose's land use policies. The owners of the family that owns the golf course has been trying to develop it for almost 20 years. And the City of San Jose, through rules about traffic, essentially doesn't have a land use possibility for that. Although the city has indicated that they want to rewrite their rules for evergreen traffic, and that is the Pleasant Hills Golf Course is really can't be developed right now because of the City of San Jose's policies called the Evergreen East Hills Development Policy. Jobs at Reidhillview, I think that your point is 100% well taken. I'll ask one of you or Eric to give me the number of jobs that are currently at Reidhillview Airport so that I can factor that into my discussion. The loss of those jobs is important. And I think overall, you know, you referenced that the report is biased, but the reasons that you described were because it didn't offer an alternative to keep the airport open. And you may feel that the report is biased, and there may be good reasons for that, but we didn't intend to write a report about keeping the airport open because that's not what the Board of Supervisors told us to do. So the report might be biased if you feel that way, but it was never intended to write a vision for an airport. It was to write a vision for replacing an airport. And I'm sorry that is upsetting to a lot of people, but I mean, it's a serious thing, but I've had this conversation with a lot of folks, and the report was not about a vision for the airport.
Shouldn't we have such a vision, at least as a concept?
Is that from you?
That's HP asking the question here.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes, we should. And the Save Reidhillview organization is in fact trying to pull that together right now. We're talking to an architect to see if we can come up with some similar glamorous architects renderings of what a airport with commercial development along the Capitol boundary would look like. So yes, we need essentially an alternative vision.
And remember, we wrote the vision, the business plan with a very limited fund. I don't know if you recall, but we had to fight for every dollar with the airport commission, even the way we wrote it and who wrote it. And, you know, we wrote a report that is exactly what you just described, John. It
Pretty
just
close,
it
yeah.
didn't have any pretty pictures. That's the report that we wrote. Now, it didn't have the pretty pictures, but it was about converting almost the entire frontage on Capitol over to private development. It talked about funding for facilities. It talked about funding for the airfields. It talked about a way to fund those airfields. You know, and accept FAA grants, and we would have a beautiful, prosperous airport. Yeah,
Right.
you know, and we'll take note of that.
I think that
I
plan
think
needs
it's
to be
important.
possibly resurrected, Harry.
You know, so let me just also say, well, since we're at it, all of your comments, to the extent that we can capture them, and that they're all going to be reflected in the package that we send to the Board of Supervisors. So if you, for instance, were to send me Scott's video, I would include that in the package. If you send me your vision plan, John, that will be included in the package. We have a limit of time on how effectively we can do that. And if Yarden can remind me of, there's a cutoff date that we've been sticking with. Can you?
Yeah, well, there is some flexibility to that. Thank you, Harry, for bringing this up.
Yeah.
Of course, at any board meeting, public comments are always welcome and appreciated. What we aim to do with this project and is that any comments received through our website or our comment portal, which I will link to soon in the comments here on this chat, I believe up to approximately by the beginning of November, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date right now, we will package them and send them as attachments to the board report itself. In addition, there are several other ways that you can comment to the board. You can provide written comments to the clerk of the board. I'll also send a link to that. And that will go directly to the board, but will not be, and that will go directly to the board and will be read and heard, as well as you will have a chance to speak at the board meeting on November 17th in public comments for this item.
All right, Jan, that's a great segue. I want to jump in here for just a minute before we go on to other questions. You know, the reason why we have this meeting today is for everybody to understand what the problems are, what the situation is. And we expect all the 59 people right now to step up and to make their voices heard. And you just heard from Jan, there's a number of opportunities to do that. It's tonight, it's with written comments to the Board of Supervisors and so forth. Don't rely on a few of us, like John, Steve, and David, myself, to do all the heavy lifting here. It's on you, and I expect the reason why you joined this call is because you're interested in doing something. So I would expect to see actions coming out of all of you and make your voices heard and let the Board of Supervisors understand what we want.
Well,
All right, so let's go on with John again.
One very important message for people who haven't been following the Board of Supervisors on a daily basis or the politics, and it's really important. 2 of the 3 supervisors who voted to stop taking grants and explore closing the airport will no longer be on the Board of Supervisors in January. So both Ken Yeager and Dave Cortese, who joined Cindy Chavez in voting for these 11 points, are you know, Yeager is already, he left the board in 2019, and Cortese is leaving in January. So there is at least the potential that will be a different looking Board of Supervisors, not necessarily reviewing this in November, but certainly making decisions about the airport starting in 2021. And it's part of why this election is as important as it is. So there is hope that a different Board of Supervisors might have a different approach to the airport than the supervisors in 2018.
Can you attach the business plan that you created as an appendix to the report that you submit on the 17th?
I don't think that really would be, I don't see any reference to that business plan.
It's no longer relevant. It's a historical document, but it basically suggested that there could be a lot of commercial development along the Capitol Corridor, all the way from the end of the runway down to the pumpkin patch, as long as it met the FAA clear zone and height limits.
It also recommended receiving full value for any other lands like the East Ridge Little League. It also recommended accepting FAA grants. It also recommended increasing significantly the cost of the FBO leases, which were all set to expire and which we planned at the time to increase the funding and the revenue that we receive from all the FBOs, which are paying, not that much. And then also adjusting all of the hangar rents. And it had a comprehensive plan. Now, it might not have been prepared by, one of these aviation consultants or anything like that. But it was a pretty solid plan, and it was a plan that was designed to make the airports healthier, and it would have been the springboard to allow a lot of the conversation that's going on here right now.
John, do we have anything in the queue?
Hang on a minute. We had a temporary internet freeze over here.
I'm sorry. Harry, can you explain to the group a little bit more? I was just looking through the chat. Can you explain to them what happens after 2031? That's when the FAA grants expire, but that's not necessarily when the airport will actually close, correct?
Well, yeah, I thank you, Yarden, I noticed that question in the chat, but it was going hot and heavy there, and I think it moved up in the queue. I think the question was actually, John, if it's okay, about what would the timing be to close an airport, right?
Yeah.
I think that's early on in the chat. It was something like that, right, Yarden?
There were a couple, but
there were a few, yeah. But they all touched on the same.
Yeah.
When could they make the decision? And
we can talk about that. That's something that we were, yeah. So
in theory, anytime between now and 2031, the supervisors could vote to begin steps to close the airport, to take the next step and say, we believe as a board that the airport should close. And then all that's left is the implementation details at some point, probably after 2031.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is just kind of marching backward from a date. And this would be in the no litigation scenario, which I think is an impossible scenario. So that's why I say that everything I'm about to say assumes no litigation, and I don't think that's possible. Okay, but assuming no litigation, in order for the county to make a decision like that, the decision would have a material effect on the environment in California. So the county would have to write at least one EIR, possibly two EIRs. And the preparation of an EIR to close an airport, and I think would take 2 to 3 years. And the reason why I say it would take so long is probably because the county has responsibility for the San Martin airport. It is under CEQA law, it's probably clear that San Martin would have to be evaluated, at least because it would be within the Board of Supervisors' purview. So I think it's at least a 3-year EIR process that would be necessary before you could take a vote. And that's my opinion. But so if you march back from 2031, and that doesn't suppose the situation that we learned about what happened in Santa Monica, which was 20 years of back and forth. It looked like to us about 20 years of back and forth, and then the FAA finally agreeing to a 10-year closure process. So, I mean, the Santa Monica situation looked like it was a 30-year process. So
Right.
my answer is either 2001. We should have started in 2001 because that's 30 years from 2031. Or my answer is a 3-year EIR, which would put you in the 2028 range.
Okay. An actual question about the actual vision plan, Harry, which you mentioned the community concern about displacement, and I've used the term Santana Row East. If the airport is redeveloped as a Santana Row East in that neighborhood, one absolute side benefit is going to be gentrification, which is going to make displacement and rent dramatically worse than it is today. How did that get sort of slid by in the report? It doesn't really get the credit it deserves because.
Well, I think that there were some pretty pictures in the report, which is kind of always necessary. And they're instructive because they do represent what land development looks like in California today. If you look deeper into the demographics study that we did, and there's additional background, we had sub-consultants that did market analysis. The area seems to be adequately retailed, and probably over-retailed in some cases. So I don't think that there's really a market even 10 years from now for that type of development, John, but I'm not a residential or a developer in that area. I think there would be tremendous pushback from the community for that type of proposal because of exactly what you said. And I think that there's real fear in the community of, change, just like any community, the unknown of 200 acres of development is a massive amount of development.
The Valco experience in Cupertino is probably a good object lesson on.
Exactly, and East Ridge, it has been a struggling mall for at least 20 years, and it's not the airport that causes it to struggle. I mean, it has been a struggling mall. I think the area, the analysis showed that the area is probably over retailed. And maybe it's not properly retailed, meaning that a shopping center, a regional shopping center, isn't the right, and there's more neighborhood serving retail and neighborhood services that are necessary.
All right, let's go on the couple of other questions on the chat room here. John, do you want to pick one?
David Gooden had a question. David, you want to unmute yourself?
I beg your pardon? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, I hear you. I don't believe I had a question. I've just been answering other people's questions right now.
Okay.
I did. There's another David.
Another David. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is mainly around, because some of the bullet points that were talked about improving the infrastructure and resources down at San Martin, like adding a tower and whatnot. There's a lot of operations in and out of Reidhillview every day. How would that scale at San Martin? I mean, when you get busy at Reidhillview, there's a ton of operations. And if you only had one runway at San Martin, I mean, you'd be on short final all the way back at Gilroy because the pattern would be so busy. So, has any study been done on how introducing all these extra airplanes down at San Martin, or what about talking to the people of San Martin? Because I could see that they would oppose this just as much as the people at the residents around Reidhillview.
I'll answer that for Harry, given the break. The detailed studies of what it would take to expand the infrastructure in San Martin to handle Reidhillview traffic hasn't been done yet.
Yep.
Informal chats with FAA and recognition that some of the neighbors would not be pleased, but that is one of the bullet points, or those bullet points. Moving San Jose State to San Martin, expanding San Martin, adding a tower, expanding the runway, lengthening the runway, adding a second. None of that is being studied in detail today. The only
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
So this is Stephen McHenry, president of the San Martin Neighborhood Alliance, also a pilot that flies out of South County. So I have some opinions on both sides of the line, but the residents are pretty opposed to the expansion of San Martin. I think in a lot of cases, we look at what happened in Orange County, where it went from this nice little field into a regional jet center or reliever airport for LAX. Now, probably that's not going to happen because of San Jose so close. But, expanding the runway to 5,000 feet, taking in a lot of extra jet traffic, et cetera, is not what we're really looking forward to in rural San Martin. We just feel it's an inappropriate development. And I think you're going to find a lot of opposition. And anybody that wants to reach out to me privately, happy to chat about that.
I'm not seeing any other questions, Walt, and I'm sensitive to the fact that it's getting late. I just want to make a comment to the people who are on the call who either haven't been aware, or it certainly seems like an awful lot haven't been participating in the last 3 years of efforts through CAPSO and now Save Reidhillview.org. Make sure we have a way to get a hold of you. Make sure that you get in touch with us. If the airport is going to be saved, it's not going to be saved by 10 of us. It's going to take a much larger effort for that. And that includes coming up with a viable plan for a airport that will work in the community, that can provide jobs, that will provide revenue to support itself. All of those things that were in the original business plan, we're going to have to be able to point out how that can be done. And in the meantime, we didn't talk about lead at all. I'd love to have that sidebar about maybe trying to pool some of the airports between Palo Alto, Reidhillview, San Martin, and see if we got 5 or 6 airports, would that be enough to bring swift fuel to the area in a reliable supply? Because the majority of airplanes at San Carlos, Palo Alto, Reed, San Martin could all burn swift fuel if we could get it and put it in the airplanes. So that's something we'd love to talk about, and that would make the lead study a lot less potentially hazardous, because Swift is unleaded 94.
All right. Well, I follow your lead, John. It's getting late here, and I think we have discussed a lot of things that are important.
I have one comment that I see D. Resnick put in the chat, and it was one thing that I noticed wasn't here, and I'm sorry because it is late, but I think in the vision plan, it really isn't mentioned. It's mentioned that you have the emergency office service, or whatever it was called, EO, as like a little note in the vision plan, but I think the recent events with the fire do warrant that more should be added and discussed on the emergency use of Reidhillview, and the amount of time it would take if they had to use an alternative base like Hollister. I do know after recent events, a lot of people I talked to in the hills did think that some small sort of permanent base at Reidhillview is definitely something that is needed. So I think that's something that should be added to the vision plan, and
all right, thank you, Kenny.
Needs more emphasis.
Yeah.
Let me just add, I think it's totally appropriate and I just want to point out that one of the items that the administration has to prepare, independent of this, is a report on Reidhillview's utility as an emergency services resource and disaster. So that's actually a whole report that we have to prepare. that we've been working on, and we are, really aware of how both airports were used recently and how they've been used historically, and that's not lost on us. And ironically, those helicopters were actually fighting the fire in Gilroy, which was closer to that fire. They were fighting it down by Coe Park at over the other side of Hunting Hollow.
Actually, the ones at Reidhillview were fighting the ones on Mount Hamilton. I talked directly to the CAL FIRE guys on that one. So
yeah,
I just want to clear that.
We stood there and watched the plane. We watched the whole operation on the runway with the CAL FIRE guys. And Mount Hamilton, well, let me just finish. The aircraft at San Martin were actually fighting the Santa Cruz fire, which actually Hollister was closer, but they have their reasons, and sometimes they're not completely decipherable. It had to do with whether or not fixed wings were available and the availability of helicopters, and then the availability, I asked a lot of questions exactly why they chose what they did. But you know what? If you say they're fighting at Mount Hamilton, they were fighting at Mount Hamilton. But
all right, very good.
But we have a good handle on that. But we have to write the point I was trying to make, and that's the appropriate thing, is that we have to write a report on Reidhillview as an emergency asset. That is an outstanding thing that we have to do.
Thank you, Harry. All right, I want to close here and let everybody know, if you haven't heard from us, it's because you didn't tell us who you are. So go to our safereidhillview.org website, click the join button, and then we know who you are so we can communicate with you. There's been an awful lot of communication in the last couple of months, and if you haven't received any, it's that because we don't know you. So with that, I'd like to thank Harry for his time.
Can I say one more thing, Walt?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to just share with you a couple of, just one thought. I want to thank you very much for letting us present. And I want to really do appreciate you listening. I know it is a tough subject. I also want to tell you that I will strive to always take your call, your email, messages to me. I'm a public servant, and my job is to be open and transparent, and I attempt to be open and transparent and say what I think and what I believe whenever I talk to you, and I strive to do that. And I tried very hard to do that today, and I'm going to be blunt with you, and I'm going to be straightforward, but I expect the same from you. And I do just basically, all of us want to thank you really for letting us talk to you. We thank you for that. And we appreciate the opportunity to do that sincerely.
Well, thank you.
All of it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all for participating. This is not the last time we're going to meet about this subject. So keep in mind November 17, that's going to be an important date for all of you to participate. Yes. And go to our safereidhillview.org website. Easy to remember, safereidhillview.org. Press the join button so we know who you are and we can communicate with you. Okay? Thank you all and have a good evening.
Is not there yet. It'll be up there in a day or two.